Hey YouTubers, it's me, Lonnie Clark, Nuts for Art, Beyond Extinction Love. I feel like I should apologize to you because I haven't posted a reading on Black Like Me in a couple of days. I went to the protest yesterday and I came home. I was there for 3.5 hours, just exhausted, and I just couldn't read. So I'm reading to you before I get to work today so that I don't miss a day again. I didn't read on Sunday. Yesterday was Monday and I don't want to go a third day. So we are going to pick this back up. Black Like Me, John Howard Griffin. We're in the middle of page 110, and I'm just going to read the last sentence so we can pick this up. A fragment of memory returned. Recollection of myself as a youngster reading Lillian Smith's Strange Fruit, her description of the Negro boy stopping along a lonely path to urinate. Now, years later, I was there in a role foreign to my youth's wildest dreamings. I felt more profoundly than ever before the totality of my Negro-ness, the immensity of its isolating effects. The transition was complete from the white boy reading a book about Negroes in the safety of his white living room to an old Negro man in the Alabama swamps, his existence nullified by men, but reaffirmed by nature in his functions, in his affection. Okay, my friend said as we turned back. Moonlight caught his protruding cheekbones and cast the hollow beneath its shadow. Okay, I said. The house stood above us, rickety, a faint light at the window. I could hear the whites say, "Look at that shanty. They live like animals. If they wanted to do better, they could. And they expect us just to accept them? They like to live this way. It would make them feel just as miserable to demand a higher standard of living as it would to make us miserable to put us down to that standard." I mentioned this to my host. "But we can't do any better," he said. "We work just for that. To have something a little better for our kids and us." "Your wife doesn't seem to go down in the dumps," I remarked. "No, she's good all the way through. I'll tell you, if we don't have meat to cook with the beans, why, she just goes ahead and cooks the beans anyhow." He said this last with a flourish that indicated the grandness of her attitude. We placed buckets of water on the cast iron wood stove in the kitchen so that we could have warm water for washing and shaving. Then we returned outside to fill the wood box. "Are there really a lot of alligators in these swamps?" I asked. "Oh God, yes. The place is alive with them." "Why don't you kill some of them? The tails make good meat. I could show you how. We learned in jungle training when I was in the Army." "Oh, you can't do that. They stick $100 fine on you for killing a gator." "I'm telling you," he laughed sourly, "they got all the loopholes plugged up. There ain't no way you can win in this state." "But what about the children?" I asked. "Aren't you afraid the gators might eat one of them?" "No," he said forlornly. "The gators like turtle better than they do us." "They must be part white," I heard myself say. His laughter sounded flatly in the cold air. "As long as they keep their bellies full with turtles, there's no danger to us. Anyways, we keep the kids close to the house." The fine for killing gators appears to be a conservation measure and the means for controlling turtles, not a punitive action against the Negroes, though few Negroes realize this. That was a footnote, that last comment. "They must be part white," I heard myself say. Oh, I read that. The cheerful and fretful noises of children being readied for bed drifted to us as we returned to the kitchen. Physical modesty in such cramped quarters was impossible. Indeed, in such a context, it would have been ridiculous. The mother sponge-bathed the children while the husband and I shaved. Each of the children went to the toilet, a zinc bucket in the corner, since it was too cold for them to go outside. Their courtesy to me was exquisite. While we spread tow sacks on the floor, then feed sacks over them, The children asked questions about my own children. Did they go to school? No, they were too young. How old were they? Why, today is my daughter's 5th birthday. Would she have a party? Yes, she certainly had a party. Excitement, like we had all been there with the candy and everything. Yes, something like that. But it was time to go to bed, time to stop asking questions. The magic remained for them, most unbearable to me, the magic of children thrilled to know my daughter had a party. The parents brought in patchwork quilts from under the bed in the other room and spread them over the pallets. The children kissed their parents and then wanted to kiss Mr. Griffin. I sat down on a straight back kitchen chair and held out my arms. One by one they came, smelling of soap and childhood. One by one they put their arms around my neck and touched their lips to mine. One by one they said and giggled soberly, "Good night, Mr. Griffin." Then I stepped over them to my pallet near the kitchen door and lay down fully dressed. Warning the children he did not want to hear another word from them, the father picked up the kerosene lamp and carried it into the bedroom. Through the doorless opening, I saw light flicker on the walls. Neither of them spoke. I heard the sounds of undressing. The lamp was blown out, and a moment later, their bed springs creaked. Fatigue spread through me, making me grateful for the toe-sack bed. I fought back glimpses of my daughter's birthday party in its cruel contrast to our party here tonight. "If you need anything, Mr. Griffin, just holler," the man said. "Thank you, I will. Good night." "Good night," the children said, in their voices locating them in the darkness. "Good night," again. "Good night, Mr. Griffin." "That's enough," the father called out warningly to them. I lay there watching moonlight pour through the crack on the ill-fitted door as everyone drifted to sleep. Mosquitoes droned loudly until the room was quite a hum. I wondered that they should be out on such a cold night. The children jerked in their sleep, and I knew that they had been bitten. The stove cooled gradually with almost imperceptible interior pops and puffings. Odors of the night and autumn and the swamp entered to mingle the inside odors of children, kerosene, cold beans, urine, and the dead incense of pine ashes. The rots and the freshness combined into a strange fragrance, the smell of poverty. For a moment, I knew the intimate and subtle joys of misery. And yet misery was the burden, the pervading, killing burden. I understood why they had so many children. These moments of night, when the swamp and the darkness surrounded them, evoked an immense loneliness, a dread, a sense of exile from the rest of humanity. When the awareness of it strikes, a man either suffocates with despair or he turns to cling to his woman, to console and seek consolation. Their union is momentary escape from the swamp night, from utter hopelessness of it ever getting better for them. It is ultimately tragic, a tragic act wherein the hopeless seek hopeless. Wow, excuse me, I'm going to read that again, I'm sorry. It is an ultimately tragic act wherein the hopeless seek hope. That's a good sentence. Thinking about these things, the bravery of these people attempting to bring up a family decently, their gratitude that none of their children were blind or maimed, their willingness to share their food and shelter with the stranger, the whole thing overwhelmed me. I got up from bed, half frozen anyway, and stepped outside. A thin fog blurred the moon. Trees rose from ghostly masses in the diffused light. I sat on an inverted wash tub and trembled, and its metallic coldness seeped through my pants. I thought of my daughter Susie and of her 5th birthday today, the candles, the cake, and party dress, and of my sons in their best suits. They slept now in clean beds in a warm house while their father, a bald-headed old Negro, sat in the swamps and wept, holding it in so he would not awaken the Negro children. I felt again the Negro children's lips soft against mine, so like the feel of my own children's good-night kisses. I saw again their large eyes, guileless, not yet aware that doors into wonderlands of security, opportunity, and hope were closed to them. I was thrown in my face. I saw it not as a white man and not as a Negro, but as a human parent. Their children resembled mine in all ways except the superficial one of skin color, as indeed they resembled all children of all humans. Yet this accident, this least important of all qualities, the skin pigment, marked them for inferior status. It became fully terrifying when I realized that if my skin were permanently black, they would unhesitatingly consign my own children to this being future. One can scarcely conceive the full horror of it unless one is a parent who takes a close look at his children and then asks himself how would he feel if a group of men should come to his door and tell him they had decided, for reasons and convenience to them, that his children's lives would henceforth be restricted, their world smaller, their educational opportunities less, their future mutilated. One would see it as the Negro parent sees it, for this is precisely what happens. He looks at his children and knows no one, not even a saint, can live without a sense of personal value. The white races has masterfully defrauded the Negro in this sense. It is least obvious but most heinous of all crimes. I'm going to read that again. It is the least obvious but most heinous of all race crimes, for it kills the spirit and the will to live. It was too much. Though I was experiencing it, I could not believe it. Surely in America, a whole segment of decent souls could not stand by and allow such massive crimes to be committed. I try to see the white side as I have all along. I have studied objectively the anthropological arguments, the accepted cliches about cultural and ethnic differences, and I have found their application simply untrue. The two great arguments, the Negro's lack of sexual morality and his intellectual incapacity, are smoke screens to justify prejudice and unethical behavior. Recent scientific studies, published in the 8th generation Harper Brothers, New York, shows that contemporary middle-class Negro has the same family cult, the same ideals and goals as his white counterpart. The Negro's lower scholastic showing springs not from racial default, but from being deprived of cultural and educational advantages by the whites. When the segregationist argues that the Negro is scholastically inferior, he presents the most eloquent possible argument for desegregated schools. He admits that so long as the Negro is kept in 10th-rate schools, he will remain scholastically behind white children. I have held no brief for the Negro. I have looked diligently for all aspects of inferiority among them and cannot find them. All the cherished question-begging epithets applied to the Negro race, and the widely accepted as true, even by men of goodwill, will simply prove untrue when one lives among them. This, of course, excludes the trash element, which is the same everywhere and is no more evident among Negroes than whites. When all the talk, all the propaganda has been cut away, the criterion is nothing but the color of skin. My experience proved that. They judged me by no other quality. My skin was dark. That was sufficient reason for them to deny me those rights and freedoms without which life loses significance and becomes a matter of little more than animal survival. I searched for some answer and found none. I had spent a day without food and water for no other reason than my skin was black. I was sitting on a tub in the swamp for no other reason. I went back into the shanty. Excuse me, you guys. I went back into the shanty. The air was slightly warmer and smelled of kerosene, tow sacks, and humanity. I lay down in darkness in the midst of snores. Mr. Griffin, Mr. Griffin. I heard the man's voice above my shouts. I awakened to see the kerosene lamp and beyond it my host's troubled face. "Are you all right?" he asked. In the surrounding darkness, I sensed the tension. They lay silent, not snoring. "I'm sorry," I said. "I was having a nightmare." He stood upright. From my position flat on the floor, his head appeared to be touching the ceiling beams far above. "Are you all right now?" "Yes, thank you for waking me up." He stepped carefully over to the children and returned to the other room. It was the same nightmare I had been having recently. White men and women, their faces stern and heartless, closed in on me. The hate stare burned through me. I pressed back against a wall. I could expect no pity, no mercy. They approached slowly, and I could not escape them. Twice before, I had awakened myself screaming. I listened for the family to settle back into sleep. The mosquitoes swarmed. I lighted a cigarette, hoping its smoke would drive them out. The nightmare worried me. I had begun this experiment in the spirit of scientific detachment. I wanted to keep my feelings out of it, to be objective in my observations. But it was becoming such a profound personal experience, it haunted even my dreams. My host called out to me again at dawn. His wife stood in lamplight at the stove, pouring coffee. I washed my face in a bowl of water she had heated for me. We spoke by nods and smiles to avoid waking the children sprawled on the floor. After breakfast of coffee and a slice of bread, we were ready to leave. I shook hands with her at the door and thanked her. Reaching for my wallet, I told her I wanted to pay for putting me up. She refused, saying that I had brought more than I had taken. "You gave us a penny. We owe you the change." I left money with her as a gift for the children, and the husband drove me back to the highway. The morning was bright and cool, but before long, a car with 2 young white boys picked me up. I quickly saw that they were, like many of their generation, kinder than the older ones. They drove me to a small town bus station where I could catch a bus. I bought a ticket to Montgomery and went to sit outside on the curb where other Negro passengers gathered. Many Negroes walked through the streets. Their glances were kind and communicative, as though all of us shared a common secret. As I sat in the sunlight, a great heaviness came over me. I went inside to the Negro restroom, splashed cold water on my face, and brushed my teeth. Then I brought out my hand mirror and inspected myself. I had been a Negro no more than 3 weeks, and it no longer shocked me to see this strange face in the mirror. My hair had grown to a heavy fuzz. My face skin, with the continued medication, exposed to sunlight and ground-in stain, was what Negroes call a pure brown, a smooth, dark color that made me look like millions of others. I noted, too, that my face had lost animation. In repose, it had taken on the strained, disconsolate expression that is written on the countenance of so many Southern Negroes. My mind had become the same way, dozing empty for long periods. It thought of food and water, but so many hours were just spent waiting, cushioning self against dread, that it no longer thought of much else. Like the others in my condition, I was finding life too burdensome. I felt a great hunger for something merely pleasurable, for something that people call fun. The need was so great that deep within, through the squalor and the humiliations of life, I took some joy in the mere fact that I could be alone for a while, inside the restroom cubicle with its clean plumbing and unfinished wood walls. Here I had a water faucet to drink from, and I could experience the luxury of splashing cold water on my face as much as I wanted. Here, with the latch on the door, I was isolated from the hate stares, the contempt. The smell of ivory livened the atmosphere. Some of the stain came off, and I wondered how long it would be before I could pass as white again. I decided to take no more pills for a while. I removed my shirt and undershirt. My body, so long unexposed to the sun or the sun lamp, had paled to a cafe au lait color. I told myself I would have to be careful not to undress unless I had privacy henceforth. My hands and face were far darker than my body. Since I often slept in my clothes, the problem would not be that great. I wet my sponge, poured dye on it, and touched up the corners of my mouth and lips, which were always the difficult spot. We boarded the bus in the afternoon and wrote without incident to Selma, where I had a long layover before taking another bus to the state capitol. Oh, geez, it's at page 22. We're at 22 minutes, you guys, so I'm going to stop here. We're at page 118, and I will do another reading. I don't know if I'll be able to do it once I finish work, but I'll for sure. If not tonight, I'll do another reading tomorrow. So I appreciate you listening to me, and I still do recommend you buying this book and reading it. I don't think it's on audio. I looked around for it, which is why I'm reading it. And I hope that many of you were at the protest yesterday. This is actually really, we're in a war of white supremacy right now. That's what I think it is. So, and I apologize for not cutting out my coughing. I don't know how to do the editing part on the YouTube thing. I haven't figured that out. So you're just going to have to deal with my coughing a little bit there in the middle of it. So put your courage feet on, you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Ciao.